The first bullet tore through Lily Sinclair's back before she even heard the gunshot. The second ripped through her right shoulder blade. The third grazed her skull, sending her vision into a kaleidoscope of white-hot pain and encroaching darkness. But none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was the 6-year-old boy trembling beneath her body, still breathing, still alive, because she had thrown herself between him and death itself. The living room of the Moretti mansion transformed into a war zone in less than 30 seconds. Smoke grenades hissed toxic clouds across Italian marble floors. Shattered glass from exploded windows glittered like deadly diamonds in the afternoon light. 4 men dressed in black tactical gear, faces masked, moved with military precision through the chaos automatic weapons trained on anything that still moved. Lily had seen the danger 60 seconds before it arrived. She'd been in the kitchen preparing afternoon tea when something in her gut twisted with a familiar recognition, a dread she hadn't felt since West Virginia, since the night her father's blood had pooled on their porch floor while lone sharks stood over his broken body. The delivery truck parked across the street for 2 hours. The gardener who hadn't shown up for work. The almost imperceptible blind spot in the security camera coverage she'd noticed that morning while dusting the monitors. Her father's voice echoed through her fading consciousness. Learn to see danger before it sees you, Lily. That's the only way you survive in our world. She had survived West Virginia. She had survived losing everything. She had survived 8 months of invisible servitude in this cold New York mansion where she was nothing more than the help. A small town girl from nowhere scrubbing floors and raising a child who wasn't hers while sending 70% of her paycheck back to her 17-year-old sister Emma. But surviving had taught her to recognize the signature of violence. And when those windows exploded inward, her body had moved on pure instinct. The boy beneath her, Matteo Moretti, was sobbing against her chest, his small hands clutching her uniform as if she were the only solid thing left in the universe. Blood soaked through the fabric, her blood spreading in warm rivulets that she could feel but somehow couldn't process. The pain was distant now, replaced by a strange floating sensation she recognized from her nursing school days. Shock, blood loss, organ damage. She was dying. If you're already hooked by Lily's sacrifice, smash that like button and share this story with someone who loves impossible love. Subscribe now, because what Vincent Moretti does next will leave you breathless. Through the veil of toxic smoke and the deafening crack of gunfire, the steel, cold gray eyes of Vincent Moretti swept across the living room as it drowned in chaos. They called him the Iron Wolf, the Lord of New York's underworld empire, the man who ran half the city with an iron fist and a bottomless cruelty. In 36 years of life, Vincent had never known what fear was. He had watched his father get assassinated right in front of him without shedding a single tear. He had buried his wife with a face still cold as stone. But the moment his gaze found Lily Sinclair, lying motionless on the floor, blood spreading into a red pool beneath her, something inside his chest tightened in a way he couldn't explain. 3 shots rang out in quick succession from the Beretta in Vincent's hand. 3 assassins hit the floor before they could even swing their barrels toward him. No hesitation, no blink, only the lethal precision of a man who had killed more than his years. The 4th assassin tried to lunge for the shattered window, but Vincent was faster. He grabbed the back of the man's neck, twisted hard, and the sound of bone snapping cracked dry through the air. The body crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. Vincent's expression didn't change, still as cold and detached, as if he were handling a tedious chore. In the 8 months Lily had worked in this mansion, Vincent had looked at her only twice. The first time was the day she arrived, when he asked her name and forgot it immediately, because to him, she was just one of dozens of nameless servants passing through his life. The second time was 2 hours before the bullets tore through her body. He had been walking down the hallway when he saw her sitting there reading to Matteo, her voice gentle and warm in a way this cold mansion had been missing for far too long. He had stopped, truly looked at her, and asked how long she'd been taking care of his son. She lifted her head, green eyes meeting gray, and answered softly, 8 months, sir. 8 months, and now she was dying because of his son. Vincent lunged toward Lily, his knees sliding across the marble floor, slick with blood. He pulled her away from Matteo as gently as he could, passing the boy into the arms of Marco, who had just come running in. His hands were shaking. For the first time in 36 years, Those hands that had squeezed a trigger more times than he could count trembled beyond control. He pressed his palm to the wound in her back, trying to stop the blood that wouldn't stop pouring out. But there was too much blood. Far too much. It spilled through the gaps between his fingers, hot and slippery, as if her life were draining away right in front of him. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do. His voice broke, rough and raw in a way that even he didn't recognize as his own. No, no, stay with me. Don't stay with me. Lily's eyes fluttered half open, glassy, yet they still found his. Through the fog of death drawing near, she whispered, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. The boy, is he safe? The boy, is he safe? Yes, because of you. God, because of you. Yes, because of you, God, because of you. Her hand rose, trembling, and touched his face. Those fingers, icy and soaked in blood, brushed along his cheek in a way no one had dared touch Vincent Moretti for the past 3 years. And she smiled. A smile so faint, so sincere, it hurt to look at. You remembered my name. You remembered my name. Then the darkness swallowed her. The wail of an ambulance siren tore through the night, settling over New York. Paramedics rushed into the Moretti mansion with a stretcher. But when they moved to load Lily into the vehicle, Vincent stopped them with a look as cold as ice. I'm going with her. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order that couldn't be argued with. A young paramedic started to protest, but Marco grabbed him and pulled him back, whispering a few words into his ear. The paramedic's face drained of color when he realized who he had almost dared to defy. Vincent carried Matteo into the ambulance and set the boy down on the seat beside Lily's gurney. Father and son were both smeared with her blood. Vincent's $10,000 suit, now nothing more than fabric soaked through with red, and Matteo's pajamas blotched like a nightmare painted in stains. The 6-year-old screamed and sobbed. Stood, his voice gone from too much shouting, tears streaming down his chubby cheeks where streaks of blood still clung. Save her, Daddy. She saved me. You have to save her. Save her, Dad. She saved me. You have to save her. Vincent pulled his son into his arms, one arm wrapped around Matteo, the other reaching for Lily's ice-cold hand. She was still unconscious, an oxygen mask covering half her pale face, blood still seeping through the temporary bandage the paramedics had rushed to wrap around her. Vincent's thumb traced small circles over the back of her hand without thinking, a gentle gesture he hadn't made for anyone since Isabella was laid into the ground 3 years ago. He didn't even realize he was doing it. He only knew he couldn't let go of her, as if some invisible tether had hooked into his ribs and held him there, forcing him to anchor her to this world at any cost. I will save her, he whispered into Matteo's hair, damp with sweat and tears. I swear on my life, I will save her. I swear on my life. 15 minutes later, the convoy surged into the emergency bay at Mount Si with a single call from Marco. The hospital's full resources were mobilized. The best surgical team was summoned on an emergency basis. The best operating room was made ready. No one asked why, and no one dared to. The name Moretti carried more weight than any emergency order. Lily was rushed into surgery. The doors slammed shut and Vincent stood there in the brightly lit, sterile corridor, his expensive suit stained with blood that had dried into dark brown. He looked like a statue, motionless, his face empty. But those gray eyes stayed locked on the operating room doors as if he could see straight through them. Matteo had fallen asleep in the arms of Mrs. Rosa, brought in by Marco. But even in sleep, the boy still whimpered, calling Lily's name. 3 hours passed. 4. 5. Finally, the operating room doors opened, and the chief surgeon stepped out with a tired face. He looked at Vincent, then drew a deep breath before he spoke. The surgery is over, but she lost a lot of blood. Severe internal organ damage. There's a 60% chance she won't make it through the night. Vincent's jaw clenched, a vein standing out at his temple. Then you'd better be in the other 40%. Because if she dies, everyone in this building is going to die with her. 3 days passed, like 3 years. Lily lay motionless in the hospital bed, her skin so pale it nearly blended into the white of the sheets. And the IV lines and the heart monitor were the only things proving she was still alive. Vincent didn't leave the hospital for even one step. He refused to go home and change his clothes, refused to eat a proper meal, refused every emergency meeting the Kappa regime kept demanding. Marco brought him a clean suit, but it stayed in the bag unopened. New York's Iron Wolf now sat on the hard chair in the VIP room, stubble rough along his jaw, eyes hollow from lack of sleep, and his gaze never once left the face of the girl in a coma in front of him. Mateo refused to go home too. The 6-year-old curled up on the sofa beside Lily's bed, clutching the worn teddy bear Lily had given him on his birthday, his lips murmuring her name even in sleep. Every time he woke, the first thing he asked was always the same. "Has Miss Lily woken up yet, Dad?" And every time Vincent could only shake his head, his throat tightening until no words would come. On the second night, Marco came with the investigation results. He stood in the corner of the room, lowering his voice so he wouldn't disturb Mateo asleep nearby. 3 of the 4 assassins had been identified. All of them were former military mercenaries, the kind of expensive professionals not just anyone could hire. Someone had paid an enormous sum for this hit. And worse, that person knew Mateo's schedule, knew exactly when the boy would be home alone with only the maid. That could mean only one thing. There was a mole inside the organization. Marco paused, watching his boss. In 15 years at Vincent Moretti's side, he'd seen this man face countless enemies, survive bloody wars, bury his father and his wife without ever breaking. But never, not once, had Marco seen Vincent like this. This wasn't the anger Marco knew, not the familiar cold fury of the Iron Wolf. This was fear, real fear. The kind Marco had believed Vincent Moretti wasn't capable of feeling. After Marco left, Vincent took out the file he'd ordered on Lily Sinclair. He read it page by page under the dim light of the hospital room, and every line felt like a blade carving into his chest. She came from a poor little town in West Virginia, a place where hope was a luxury and the future was a concept that didn't exist. Her family broke apart when she was 10. Her mother vanished without a single goodbye. Her father was addicted to alcohol and gambling. And when Lily was 16, loan sharks beat him to death right on the front porch over a debt he could never have paid. She saw all of it. After that, Lily raised her younger sister Emma alone, taking whatever work she could to bring in money. She'd studied nursing for 2 years, top of her class, but had to drop out because she couldn't afford the tuition. She came to New York looking for work, and for the past 8 months, 70% of her meager pay had been sent back to Emma so the girl could stay in school. So, at least one of the 2 sisters might have a chance to escape the spiral of poverty. Vincent closed the file, set it on the table, then looked at Lily lying there still and silent. She had nothing, no money, no power, no one to protect her. She was just a small girl from a nameless town, trying to survive in a world that had taken everything from her. And yet, she had thrown her body in front of 3 bullets for his son, a child who didn't share her blood, a family that wasn't hers. He leaned down, rested his elbows on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in years, his voice trembled when he whispered, "Why did you do it? Why did you do that? You don't even know us. You don't even know us. Why would you die for my son? Why would you die for my son?" There was no answer, only the steady beep of the heart monitor and Lily's breath, so light it barely seemed there. Then on the 3rd night, as Vincent slumped against the bed in a broken half-leap, a faint movement jolted him awake. Lily's eyelids fluttered slowly opening, her green eyes cloudy with medication and exhaustion, but still alive. Her lips moved, her voice so weak it was almost impossible to hear. "Mateo, is the boy okay?" Vincent stared at her as if she'd just performed a miracle. "You almost died for my son, and the first thing you ask is whether he's okay." A week had passed since the night Lily opened her eyes. Her body recovered slowly but steadily, enough for the doctors to allow her to be discharged on the condition that she be cared for and monitored carefully. Vincent brought her back to the Moretti mansion, but not to the small room in the servants' quarters where she'd lived for the past 8 months. Instead, she was taken to a VIP room in the east wing of the estate, right next to Mateo's bedroom. It was 5 times the size of her old room with a king-size bed, Egyptian silk sheets, and tall windows looking out over the rose garden. Lily wanted to protest, to say she was only a maid and didn't deserve this kind of treatment. But one look from Vincent silenced her. It wasn't the look of an employer handing out charity. It was the look of a man who didn't accept refusal. On the afternoon of the third day after she returned, Mrs. Rosa brought Lily a steaming bowl of chicken soup. The elderly housekeeper had worked for the Moretti family for more than 30 years. Her face lined with age, but her eyes still sharp and kind. She sat beside Lily's bed and watched her eat with a tenderness Lily hadn't received from anyone since her father died. You know, Mrs. Rosa said, her voice dropping, as if she were sharing a secret, Mr. Vincent hasn't always been this cold. Before Mrs. Isabella died, he was different, still strict, but he could laugh. Lily looked up, her spoon pausing halfway. Mrs. Isabella, Mr. Vincent's late wife. Mrs. Rosa sighed. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Her car went over a cliff on a deserted mountain road. She hesitated, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. But a lot of people believe it wasn't an accident. Mr. Vincent changed completely after that. Colder, harder, as if he buried his heart right along with Mrs. Isabella. Before Lily could ask anything more, the door swung open without a single knock. A woman stepped in and the air in the room seemed to turn to ice. She was tall and slender, with jet black hair spilling down her back and flawless pale skin. An expensive red dress clung to her perfect figure. Louis Vuitton heels clicked a steady rhythm on the wood floor, and the faint scent of Chanel drifted through the room. She was beautiful. Beautiful in a cold, dangerous way, like a venomous snake wrapped in the most dazzling skin. But it was her eyes that made Lily's skin prickle. Ice cold, sharp as blades, and filled with contempt as they looked down at Lily in the bed. Mrs. Rosa sprang to her feet, her face tight. Miss Serena, I didn't know you were coming. Serena flicked a hand without even looking at the housekeeper. Leave. I want to speak privately with this little maid. Mrs. Rosa cast Lily a worried glance, but she didn't dare argue. She stepped out in silence and closed the door behind her. Serena Blackwell moved closer, her gaze traveling from Lily's head to her feet with undisguised disdain. So you're the little maid everyone in the city's been talking about. Her voice was sweet, but it dripped with poison. Lily didn't know who she was, but the survival instincts sharpened by years in West Virginia were screaming a warning. This woman was dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Don't think you're special just because you took a few bullets. Serena sneered. Girls like you come and go in Vincent's world. You're just a number, a passing face he'll forget in a few weeks. Lily held her stare without blinking, without trembling. Years of facing loan sharks and surviving hell had taught her one thing. Never let anyone see you're afraid. And yet I'm still here, Lily said evenly. In his house, in the room right next to his son. Where are you, Miss Blackwell? Serena's face went pale for a split second, her eyes flashing with anger before she could hide it. She turned and walked toward the door, but she paused in the doorway and looked back with a smile as cold as ice. Enjoy it while you can. Girls like you don't survive in our world. Lily didn't flinch, her voice steady as stone. Girls like me are the only ones who do. 2 days after the confrontation with Serena, Lily received a message from Mrs. Rosa saying that Vincent wanted to see her in his office. She walked the long hallway of the mansion, her heart beating faster than usual without knowing why. Maybe because her meeting with Serena still haunted her, those sweetly spoken threats still echoing in her ears like a curse. The heavy oak door opened and Lily stepped into a room she'd never set foot in during her 8 months of work here. Vincent Moretti's office was dark and unmistakably masculine, with bookshelves rising to the ceiling, a gleaming black oak desk, and a faint scent of whiskey in the air. Late afternoon light slipped through the thick velvet curtains, painting pale gold streaks across the wooden floor. Vincent stood with his back to her, facing the large window, his tall frame a dark silhouette against the sky turning orange-red. He didn't turn when she entered, but his low voice carried through the quiet room. Close the door. Lily did, then stood there, waiting. Silence stretched for a few seconds, heavy and tight, before Vincent spoke again, still without turning. Marry me. Lily thought she'd heard wrong. She blinked, trying to process what had just reached her ears. I'm sorry. Marry me. Vincent finally turned, gray eyes meeting her green ones. Not for love, for survival. Lily stood there, her mouth slightly open in shock, unable to believe what she just heard. Her, a penniless maid from West Virginia, and him, the most powerful mafia boss in New York, getting married. The idea was so insane she almost laughed. But Vincent's expression was completely serious, not a trace of a joke. He walked to the desk, poured a glass of whiskey, but didn't drink it, only held it as if he needed something solid to grip. The traitor inside my organization still hasn't shown his face, he said, his voice low and cold. And after the attack, you've become a target. You know too much. You've seen too much. They won't let you live. Lily swallowed hard. Then why not simply protect me? Why do we have to get married? Because in this world, my wife is protected by my entire organization. Vincent sat the whiskey down and stepped toward her. No one dares lay a hand on the Iron Wolf's wife. But a maid? He shook his head. A maid is disposable. She can be removed at any time. Lily felt her throat go dry. What else? Vincent looked at her and something in his eyes softened. Just a little. Your sister Emma. She'll be brought to New York, enrolled in the best private school with security 24/7. No one will be able to touch her. Lily's chest tightened at the sound of Emma's name. Her little sister, the child she'd sacrificed everything to raise, was back in West Virginia, alone, completely unprotected. If the people behind the attack found Emma, Lily couldn't even force her mind to go further. In return, Vincent continued, you'll play the role of my wife in public. Attend events, parties, live in this mansion as Mrs. Moretti, and keep caring for Mateo. He paused, emphasizing each word. This is a contract marriage. No physical obligation. It ends when I find the traitor and eliminate the threat. Lily was silent for a long time, her thoughts spinning. Finally, she lifted her chin, her gaze hardening. I'm not anyone's chess piece, she said, her voice clear and final. I've lived my whole life like a piece on a board, moved wherever life wanted. I don't want to become your piece, no matter the reason. Vincent stepped closer, gray eyes locked on hers, intense and unshakable. You saved my son with your life, he said, his voice dropping, almost a whisper. This isn't repayment. This is me protecting what belongs to me now. What belongs to you? Lily wanted to ask, wanted to understand what he meant, but she didn't get the chance. The phone in her pocket vibrated, an unknown number. She glanced at Vincent for permission, then opened the message. The blood in her veins froze solid. It was a photo. Emma, her sister, walking to school with her backpack on, completely unaware that someone was watching her from across the street. And beneath the photo was a single line of text. Such a pretty little sister. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Lily looked up, her face drained, her hand trembling around the phone. Her eyes met Vincent's, and she knew he understood. When do we sign? The wedding took place 3 days later. Not in a grand church or a luxurious hotel, but in a small room at the New York City courthouse. There was no white gown, no fresh flowers, no Mendelssohn, no pealing bells. Just Lily in a simple cream dress, Vincent in his usual black suit, Marco standing as a witness with an unreadable face, and Mrs. Rosa wiping away tears in the corner, for reasons she couldn't explain. The ceremony ended in less than 15 minutes. Lily signed the marriage license, her hand trembling slightly as the pen moved across the paper. Then Vincent took her hand and slipped a diamond ring onto her left ring finger, the stone so large it felt heavy, as if she were wearing an entire new world on her hand. And just like that, Lily Sinclair became Lily Moretti. The next 2 weeks were a relentless whirlwind of change. The dull black maid's uniform was replaced by designer clothes. Lily didn't even dare look at the price tags for Valentino dresses, Hermes bags, Christian Louboutin heels, each piece costing more than an entire year of her former wages. An image consultant was hired to teach her how to move like a society wife, how to speak at parties, how to smile without revealing what she truly felt. Marco spent hours every day explaining New York's underworld to her, the name of every mafia family, the tangled web of their relationships, who was an ally, who was an enemy, who could be trusted, and who required caution. Lily memorized everything as if studying for an exam, because she understood that one small mistake in this world could be paid for with her life. Bumma was brought to New York exactly as Vincent promised. She was placed in a prestigious private school on the Upper East Side with a security team on her 24/7, shadowing her every step. When she saw her sister again, Emma cried and asked what was happening. Lily only held her and said everything would be okay, that at last their lives were changing. She didn't tell Emma the truth. She didn't speak of bullets, of a contract marriage, of an underworld drenched in blood and secrets. Emma did not need to know. Emma only needed to be safe. Lily's first public appearance as Mrs. Moretti was at an elite underworld party held in a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park. She entered at Vincent's side, one hand resting on his arm exactly as the image consultant had taught her, a long black gown fitted to her figure, and the diamond on her finger catching the light beneath crystal chandeliers. The room's reaction moved like a spreading wave. First silence, then a rising murmur of whispers. The maid, you're kidding. She's wearing Moretti's ring. Lily felt hundreds of eyes stabbing into her like knives, filled with curiosity, doubt, and contempt. But she kept her back straight, her chin high, and her expression calm, exactly as she'd been trained. Midway through the party, a middle-aged man in a pinstripe suit and a practiced smile approached them. He was one of the capos of the Ritchie family, and he was clearly displeased by Lily's presence. Mrs. Moretti, he said, his tone sweet as honey, but threaded with venom. Tell me, what do you bring to this marriage other than housekeeping skills? The room fell silent, everyone waiting to see how Lily would respond. She felt Vincent's hand tighten slightly at her waist, a gentle warning, but Lily didn't need anyone to protect her in this fight. She looked the man straight in the eyes, her lips curving into a small smile. I bring something none of you have, she said, her voice clear and carrying through the quiet space, the ability to take 3 bullets and still stand. Can you do the same? The room went dead still. The man opened his mouth, then closed it, with no idea what to say. From a far corner, Lily heard the sharp sound of glass cracking. She glanced over and saw Serena Blackwell standing there, her face drained with rage. The champagne flute in her hand fractured under the pressure of her fingers clenched tight. And beside Lily, Vincent did something that made the entire room freeze. His lips lifted just slightly, almost too subtle to notice, but it was a smile. The first smile anyone had seen on the Iron Wolf's face in 3 years, and Lily realized she was playing a far more dangerous game than she'd ever imagined. After the party that night, life inside the Moretti mansion slipped into a new rhythm, tight with tension, to mislead the household staff and make sure no one suspected the true nature of the marriage. Vincent and Lily were forced to share the master bedroom. The room was enormous with a king-size bed, deep red velvet curtains, and tall windows overlooking the garden. But the air inside always felt heavy with something no one dared to name. Vincent insisted on sleeping on the leather sofa in the corner, leaving the bed to Lily, and he wouldn't accept a single protest. This is our agreement, he said coldly. No physical obligation. I keep my word. But the forced closeness of sharing the same space created a strain they both felt, and neither of them admitted. The first night, Lily stood at the mirror, changing into her sleepwear, thinking Vincent had gone out to the balcony as usual. She unzipped her dress and let it slide off her shoulders. And in that exact moment, her eyes caught Vincent's gray gaze in the mirror. He was standing in the bathroom doorway, and he was looking at her. Not a passing glance, but a fixed, intense stare, his gray eyes darkening like a sky before a storm. Lily's heart stumbled, her breath catching in her throat. Then Vincent turned away abruptly, walked out to the balcony fast, and didn't come back until she was in bed with the covers pulled up to her chin. On the third night, Lily woke at 3:00 in the morning to the wind screaming outside the windows. She sat up and her heart seemed to stop for a beat. Vincent was standing by the window, barebacked, moonlight pouring over his skin and revealing scars crisscrossing him like a map of violence. Long scars running from shoulder to lower back, round scars from bullets, jagged scars from knives. Every scar was a story, a battle, a near death. Lily watched him, and for the first time she understood Vincent Moretti wasn't an invincible monster. He was a man of flesh and bone, who had bled, who had hurt, who carried wounds that might never truly heal. He turned and caught her watching, but he didn't say a word. He only returned to the sofa, lay down, and turned his back to her. The next afternoon, Lily was sitting in the living room, reading to Mateo when Vincent walked in. The 6-year-old looked up, his face bright, and blurted out in the most natural way, "Mommy, can you read me the story about the prince?" The whole room seemed to freeze. Lily stopped breathing, the book slipping from her hands. Vincent stood in the middle of the room, his body rigid as stone, gray eyes fixed on his son with something unreadable. Pain, hope, fear, or all of it at once. Lily looked at him, not knowing what to say, not knowing whether she should correct Mateo or not. The boy glanced between her and his father, innocent, not understanding why the adults had gone so strangely quiet. Finally, Vincent only gave a single nod, so small it was almost invisible, then turned and walked away. But before he left the room, Lily saw him lift a hand and touch the left side of his chest where his heart beat, as if he were trying to hold something back that was rising inside him. On the 5th night, Lily had a nightmare. She saw the old house in West Virginia again, saw that horrible night again. The sound of fists and boots, the snap of bones, the savage laughter of the lone sharks, and her father's blood spreading across the rotten wooden floor. She cried in her sleep, calling her father's name, begging him not to die, begging someone to save him. Then a hand touched her hand. Warm, steady, safe. Lily opened her eyes and saw Vincent sitting beside the bed in the darkness, not saying a word. He was only holding her hand, fingers laced with hers, and he stayed there in silence like a guard in the night. She didn't know how long he'd been there, didn't know what he'd heard her sob into her sleep. She only knew his presence drove the nightmare back, and she slowly slipped into a dreamless sleep, her hand still gripping his. The next morning, no one mentioned what happened in the night. Vincent was back on the sofa before she woke, and he treated her as if nothing had happened, but his hand had been warm, and Lily couldn't forget it. 2 weeks after the night, Vincent held her hand through the nightmare. A charity gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, and it was the first time they appeared before New York's upper crust as husband and wife. Lily stood before the mirror in the dressing room and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The long, black Italian silk gown clung to her body as if it had been stitched directly onto her, the back cut daringly low yet still elegant, the skirt flaring softly like water with every step she took. Her hair was swept into a high chignon, revealing the graceful line of her neck and a pair of diamond earrings that Vincent had placed in her hand this morning without a word. The full set included a necklace and bracelet as well, each diamond so pure Lily didn't dare think about what it cost. When she stepped out, Vincent was waiting at the foot of the stairs, and Lily had to steady herself so she didn't trip. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, a white shirt sharp against his sun-kissed skin, a black silk tie, and his dark hair slicked back with clean precision, beautiful enough to steal breath, dangerous enough to kill. His gray eyes swept her from head to toe, and though his face remained blank, Lily could have sworn she saw his pupils widen for a split second. "You look acceptable," he said evenly. Lily almost laughed. Acceptable, of course. The plaza that night glittered like a palace out of a fairy tale with enormous crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers flown in from the Netherlands, and 200 guests from the highest tiers of New York society. Lily entered at Vincent's side, her hand resting on his arm, and she felt the weight of hundreds of eyes turning toward them. Whispers rippled like waves, but this time they weren't laced with contempt or doubt. People looked at her with curiosity, even with a kind of respect. The maid who took 3 bullets from Moretti's son, the maid who became Mrs. Moretti. Her story had become legend in the underworld, and tonight she was the center of it all. In the middle of the evening, Vincent was invited onto the stage to speak as the principal sponsor. He stepped up tall and commanding beneath the spotlight, and when he took the microphone, the entire ballroom fell silent. "I'm not good at talking about feelings," he began, his deep voice carrying through the room. "Truth is, for many years, I wasn't sure I even had any left to talk about." Soft laughter moved through the crowd. "But my wife taught me there are things more valuable than power, more worth holding than an empire." Vincent's gaze found Lily in the crowd and stopped there, refusing to move. "She holds my heart, whatever is left of it." The audience applauded, laughter and whistles rising, but Lily didn't hear any of it. All she could see were Vincent's gray eyes fixed on her across the packed room, and her own heart beating so wildly it felt like it might break out of her chest. She knew it was an act. She knew it was all a performance, carefully staged, so why wouldn't her heart understand that? After the speech, Lily slipped out to the balcony to escape the curious questions and the probing stares. She leaned on the railing, looking out at the New York night, a thousand lights glittering like falling stars, and drew a long breath of cold air. Footsteps behind her made her turn. Vincent stepped out, loosening his tie with a tired motion, and stopped beside her. "You played your part well," he said, eyes on the skyline. Lily smiled faintly. "So did you." I almost believed it. Silence settled over them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, charged, like the air before a storm. Lily felt the warmth of Vincent's body beside hers, the faint scent of sandalwood and whiskey carried on the night wind. Then he moved closer, close enough that she could count the few rare strands of silver at his temple, close enough that their breaths almost touched. "If I kiss you right now," Vincent said, his voice dropping into a whisper, "would that be acting?" Lily's heart slammed, heat rushed into her face, but she didn't step back. She lifted her chin, green eyes meeting gray, and answered in a trembling voice she couldn't control. "I don't know, try it." Vincent didn't need to be invited twice. He bent down and his lips met hers. Gentle at first, as if asking permission, as if testing whether she would push him away, she didn't. Instead, she kissed him back, and the kiss caught fire. Vincent's arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her tight against his chest, and Lily gripped the lapel of his suit as if she was afraid she'd fall. The kiss tasted like whiskey and desperation, as if they'd both been waiting too long for this moment and couldn't hold it back any longer. A gunshot cracked from below. Screams erupted in the ballroom. Vincent yanked Lily down onto the balcony floor, his body shielding hers, the tender moment shattering in an instant. "They found us." The Plaza Hotel plunged into chaos. Gunfire erupted again and again. Panicked screams tore through the air. Glass shattered, and tables and chairs slammed to the floor as 200 well-dressed guests crushed toward the exits. The attackers in black had forced their way into the ballroom, and Vincent's security team was in a brutal firefight to hold them back. Vincent hauled Lily to her feet, one arm locked tight around her waist, the other pulling a gun from inside his suit jacket, and he dragged her toward a service stairwell. Marco stayed close behind, his pistol barking with precise shots at any shadow bold enough to come near. "Where's Mateo?" Lily shouted over the roar. "In the car." "Safe," Vincent answered, his voice taut. "We have to get out of here." They thundered down the stairs, cut through the service corridor, and burst out the rear exit where the convoy was waiting. But the moment the first car pulled away from the hotel, gunfire cracked again. An ambush. The convoy was ambushed right on the streets of New York in the dead of night. Vincent shoved Lily down onto the floor of the car, his body shielding hers, while the driver fought to accelerate out of the trap. But through the noise and chaos, Lily looked through the window and her heart seemed to stop. The car behind them, the carrying Mateo, was being approached by an assassin. The man raised his gun and aimed straight at the glass where Lily could see the terrified face of the 6-year-old boy curled into the corner of the seat. She didn't think. She flung the door open and lunged out despite Vincent's shout, sprinted toward the car behind them, yanked the door wide, and threw her body over Mateo at the exact moment the assassin pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed her arm, tearing skin and leaving a bright red streak that spread across the sleeve of her black dress. Pain ripped through her arm, but Lily didn't let go of Mateo. She wrapped him tight, shielding him with her body, and waited for the next shot. But that bullet never came. Instead, she heard a sound like an animal growl, and when she looked up, she saw Vincent. He didn't shoot the last two assassins. He beat them with his bare hands. Each punch fell like a sledgehammer, bones snapping, blood spraying, and Vincent's face was utterly blank. No anger, no hatred, only the cold emptiness of a killer without emotion. Marco stood a few meters away, not intervening, but Lily saw his hand trembling around the gun. In 15 years serving Vincent Moretti, Marco had seen his boss furious many times. But fury wasn't as frightening as what he was witnessing now. The emptiness, the complete loss of control, hiding behind a calm mask. That was what truly terrified Marco. They returned to the mansion in silence. Mateo had fallen asleep in Mrs. Rose's arms, exhausted after the terror. Lily was taken to the master bedroom where a doctor was already waiting to treat her wound, but Vincent sent him away. "I'll do it," he said, a voice that didn't accept argument. "Let me do it." He sat beside Lily with gauze and antiseptic in his hands and began wiping the blood from her arm. His touch was shockingly gentle, the exact opposite of the brutality she'd just seen not long ago. Silence stretched, heavy and taut, until Vincent finally spoke, his voice rough, as if every word hurt. "Don't ever do that again." He didn't look at her, his eyes still fixed on the wound. "Don't ever bleed for my family again." Lily looked at him, at the rigid set of his shoulders, at the jaw clenched tight, and she understood. He wasn't angry because she'd been reckless. He was afraid. Afraid because he'd almost lost her. "They're my family now," she said, her voice soft but certain. Vincent looked up, gray eyes meeting green, and something in his gaze shifted forever. Like the last wall collapsing, like a door sealed shut for years, finally cracking open. "Isabella used to say that too," he whispered, pain cutting through his voice like a knife. "She was killed because of me. My enemies wanted to bring me down, so they targeted the one I loved, and I wasn't there to protect her. I can't survive if that happens again. Not with you." Lily lifted her hand and touched his face, the same gesture she'd made when she was dying on that blood-soaked floor weeks ago. "I'm not Isabella. I survived West Virginia. I survived 3 bullets. I'll survive your world." For the first time, Vincent had no answer. In the days after the attack at the Plaza Hotel, Lily couldn't stop thinking. 2 attacks in a short span of time, both aimed at Mateo, and the traitor inside the organization still hadn't shown their face. Vincent and Marco were investigating in their way, but Lily had an advantage they didn't. She was invisible in the eyes of high society, and people often said things they shouldn't in front of a maid. She went to Mrs. Rosa, the elderly housekeeper who'd witnessed every rise and fall of the Moretti family for 30 years. Mrs. Rosa had an old connection with a servant in the Benedetti household, a woman named Maria, who'd served on Carlo's family since she was young. Through Maria, the pieces began to appear. Serena Blackwell had met her father, Don Carlo, many times in secret over the past 6 months. Not ordinary father-daughter visits, but closed-door meetings in a locked office that lasted for hours. Voices lowered so far that even the servants couldn't hear. Lily asked Marco for help, and he hacked an old phone belonging to one of Don Carlos's trusted men. In the pile of deleted messages, they found conversations between Serena and her father. "Clearing the path, clearing the path." The phrase appeared again and again, and Lily felt a chill crawl up her spine as she read it. But the discovery that truly made her shudder came from another direction. Digging deeper into the past, Lily stumbled onto the file about Isabella's death, Vincent's late wife. The crash happened 3 years ago on a lonely mountain road. Isabella's car was hit off the cliff edge and plunged into the ravine below. Police concluded it was an accident, a loss of control. But there was a single witness who claimed he'd seen another vehicle strike Isabella's car from behind. That witness vanished right after giving his statement, and no one ever found him again. It took Marco 2 days to trace the trail, and when he finally did, Lily felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. The witness had received a large payment from an anonymous bank account, and that account was linked to a shell company owned by none other than Serena Blackwell. Serena had killed Isabella. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus, clear as daylight. 5 years ago, Serena had been engaged to Vincent in an arranged marriage between 2 powerful Mafia families. She'd loved Vincent since she was 16, obsessed with him, convinced they were fate. Then Vincent met Isabella, an ordinary woman outside the underworld, and he loved her at first sight. He broke the engagement with Serena despite opposition from both families and married Isabella. Serena never forgave him. She waited, she planned, and 3 years after the wedding, she acted. Now history was repeating itself. Lily had taken Isabella's place, and Serena wouldn't stop until Lily was erased too. Lily carried all the evidence into Vincent's office late at night. He was sitting behind his desk with a glass of whiskey in his hand, and when she placed the stack of documents in front of him, she watched his face change as he read page after page. First skepticism, then shock, and finally something Lily had never seen on the Iron Wolf's face: fracture. The whiskey slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. But Vincent didn't seem to notice. He just sat there, staring at the proof, and Lily saw his broad shoulders start to tremble. For the first time, she didn't see the powerful mafia boss. She didn't see New York's terrifying Iron Wolf. She saw a man betrayed by someone he'd once trusted, a man who'd lost the wife he loved to another person's mad jealousy. She killed Isabella. Vincent's voice came out, rough and barely human. And now she's coming for you, for Mateo. He lifted his head and those gray eyes had turned into cold steel. Tonight we end this. Right after the night the truth about Serena came to light, Vincent called an emergency meeting with Marco and his most loyal Kappa regime. A plan was built in the span of a few hours. They would host a one-month wedding anniversary party at the Moretti Mansion and invite every powerful family in New York's underworld, including Serena and Don Carlo Benedetti. It would be the perfect trap. In front of more than 100 witnesses from the Mafia families, Vincent would present the evidence of Serena's crimes that she had killed Isabella and plotted to assassinate Mateo. In the underworld, murdering a boss's wife and child was an unforgivable sin, and Serena and her father would be forced to face the judgment of every family. Weapons were prepared, men were placed at every corner of the mansion. The script was mapped minute by minute. Lily would stand beside Vincent when he revealed the truth, and Marco would lead the security team to make sure no one could get out. Everything was ready for the party the following night. But Serena struck first. That afternoon, as Lily was in her room getting her dress and everything else ready for the evening, her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number with a video attached. Lily opened it, and her heart seemed to stop. Emma, her sister, was tied to a wooden chair in a dark, damp room, her eyes covered with black cloth, tears running down her cheeks. The girl was crying, her shoulders shaking in waves, and Lily could hear the thin, broken sobs through the phone screen. Then a voice came through, ice cold and sweet as venom. Come to the old warehouse at Pier 17 alone. You have 1 hour. Tell anyone and your sister will die slowly. Serena, the blood in Lily's veins turned to ice. She watched the video again and again, watching Emma cry, and it felt like someone was crushing her heart in their fist. She knew she should tell Vincent. She knew it could be a trap. But 1 hour, there wasn't enough time to plan, to move people, to do anything at all. And if Serena saw anyone with her, if she knew Lily had broken the promise, Emma would die. Her sister would die because of her. Lily stood there, her hand trembling around the phone, and she made her choice. She slid the diamond wedding ring off her finger, set it on the vanity, and wrote a short line on a sticky note. I'm sorry, I have to do this. She didn't look back. She slipped out of the room, took the service stairway she'd learned during her months as a maid, avoided every security camera and guard, and disappeared into the New York night. Her heart hammered like a war drum, but in her mind, there was only one thought. Emma. She had to save Emma, no matter the quantities. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Rosa entered the room to check whether Lily was ready. She saw the glittering ring on the vanity, the note beside it, in the empty room. Vincent's roar shook the entire mansion when she handed him the note. Find her right now. Marco was already running for the front doors before Vincent could finish the sentence. I put a tracker in her phone, sir. I know where she's going. The abandoned warehouse on Pier 17 sat at the edge of the city, where the smell of sea salt mixed with rust and the slow rot of time. Lily had the taxi drop her a block away and walk the rest, her heart beating like a war drum, each step echoing on cracked concrete. She pushed the rusted iron door, the squeal ripping through the silence, and stepped into the dark. Inside the warehouse was cold and damp, lit by the weak glow of a few bulbs dangling from the high ceiling, casting patches of light and shadow like a stage set for tragedy. And in the far corner of the vast space, Lily saw Emma. Her sister was tied to a wooden chair, her hands cuffed behind her back, her eyes still blindfolded, her body trembling in shuddering waves. When she heard Lily's footsteps, Emma lifted her head, her voice raw from too much crying. Lily, is that you? It's me, Emma. Lily wanted to run to her, but the survival instinct she'd learned in West Virginia made her stop. She knew this was a trap. She knew she wasn't alone in this warehouse. Laughter rose from the shadows, cold and delighted. Serena Blackwell stepped out like a venomous snake sliding from its den. She wore a dress as red as blood, stark against her pallid skin, her black hair loose over her shoulders, and in her hand was a pistol aimed straight at Lily. Four men dressed in black emerged from the dark corners, surrounding Lily from every side, cutting off every escape. "You really came," Serena smiled, but it never reached her ice-cold eyes. "I thought you'd run to Vincent and beg for help. But no, you came alone for this poor little sister of yours. How touching." Lily stood tall, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Let Emma go. You want me? I'm here. She has nothing to do with this." Serena laughed, the sound echoing through the empty space. "Nothing to do with it. She's your weakness. Just like your Vincent's weakness. Just like Isabella was his weakness." She stepped closer, the gun still leveled at Lily's chest, her crazed eyes shining under the dim light. "Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this? How long I've planned? I've loved Vincent since I was 16. I spent my whole life preparing to be his wife, to stand at his side, to rule this empire with him. We were destiny." Serena stopped, her face twisting under the pressure of boiling rage. And then Isabella appeared. A normal girl, nothing special, no power, no family name. And Vincent chose her. He broke his engagement to me, smeared my honor in front of both families. All for some nobody little girl. She stole what was mine. Serena's voice dropped, cold and poisonous. "So I took it back. I arranged that accident. I hired someone to ram her car off the cliff. And I watched on camera as her car went over the edge, spinning in the air, then exploding." She paused and closed her eyes as if savoring it again. "It was the best day of my life." Lily felt sick, but she didn't let it show. She looked straight into Serena's eyes, unblinking, unshaken. "And now you show up." Serena opened her eyes, her stare burning. "Another nobody, a maid. You think you deserve him? You think you can take my place?" "He never loved you, Serena," Lily said, her voice strangely calm. "Not 5 years ago. Not now. That's what you can't stand, isn't it? It's not that he chose Isabella or me. It's that he never chose you." Serena's face warped with fury. She lunged forward, pressing the gun barrel against Lily's temple, her hands shaking with rage she couldn't control. "I'm going to kill you," she hissed through her teeth. "Then I'll kill that poor little sister. And when Vincent comes for revenge, I'll kill him too. We'll die together." Romantic, isn't it? Lily felt the cold metal against her skin, and she started to cry. Begging, her voice shook. "Please don't hurt Emma. I'll do anything, please." Serena smiled in triumph, savoring her enemy's weakness, but she didn't realize Lily was buying time. Lily's eyes flicked toward the back door where she'd just seen a shadow move, where she just felt something familiar in the air. The scent of sandalwood and whiskey. A gunshot tore through the air, but it didn't come from Serena's pistol. One of the four men dropped to the floor. Blood sprang from the hole in his forehead. Then two more, then the last, each shot precise and lethal. Vincent stepped through the smoke, the gun in his hand still steaming, his gray eyes burning with cold fire. "You should have run while you still could, Serena." The warehouse erupted into a battlefield in an instant. Marco appeared at the back door, the gun in his hand, spitting non-stop fire at the men Serena still had hidden in the shadows. Shots thundered through the space, bullets tearing the air, screams breaking open, bodies slamming onto the cold concrete floor. Vincent moved like a lethal ghost, every shot finding its mark with terrifying precision. In the middle of the chaos, Lily moved. She ran for Emma, slipping on a floor slick with blood. But she didn't stop. A shard of broken glass lay near her foot, and she snatched it up, ignoring the sharp edge biting into her palm. Her blood dripped as she sawed through the rope around Emma's wrists, but she didn't feel pain. She felt only the fierce need to pull her sister out of this hell. Emma collapsed into her arms, sobbing, shaking out of control. Lily hauled her up, slung Emma's arm over her shoulder, and started dragging her toward the emergency exit in the far corner of the warehouse. Just a few meters more, just a few more steps, and they'd be safe. But Serena wouldn't lose. While Vincent and Marco were occupied with the gunman, she used the confusion to slip free of the fight. Lily heard footsteps behind her, turned, and the blood in her body turned to ice. Serena was running straight at her, black hair wild, red dress smeared with dirt, the gun in her hand aimed at Lily's chest. Her eyes were crazed like an animal cornered with nothing left to lose. "You think you can take him from me?" Serena screamed, her voice sharp with madness. "No one takes anything from me." She pulled the trigger. Everything happened in an instant, yet in Lily's eyes it moved in slow motion. She saw Serena's finger tighten, saw the flash at the muzzle, saw the bullet racing toward her. Then something slammed into Lily from the side hard enough to throw her, and the gunshot cracked at the same moment a man's grunt of pain tore through the air. Vincent, he'd hurled himself between her and the bullet, knocking her down, and the bullet tore through his shoulder instead of her chest. He fell beside her, bright red blood soaking through his black suit, spreading like dead petals across his chest. Another shot rang out and Serena screamed, collapsing as Marco's bullet tore through her leg. She shrieked and thrashed, but she couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Lily crawled to Vincent, cradling his head, tears spilling with no control. "You idiot!" she screamed, her voice breaking with fear and pain. "Why did you do that?" Vincent looked up at her, and despite the bleeding wound, despite the pain that had to be ripping through him, his mouth still curved into a weak smile. Blood stained his teeth when he spoke, his voice rough. "Now we're even, little sparrow," Lily cried, truly cried, for the first time since the night she watched her father die on that porch in West Virginia. The tears she'd held back for years burst like a dam breaking, falling onto Vincent's face as it grew paler by the second. "Don't you dare die in front of me, Vincent Moretti," she said through sobs. "I won't forgive you if you die." Vincent let out a soft laugh that turned into a painful cough. "Not a chance," he whispered. "You'd find a way down to hell just to yell at me." Marco ran over, phone pressed to his ear, his voice tight as he called for an ambulance and a medical team. Then another voice came through on speaker, a child's voice crying hard. "Is Dad okay? Is Mom okay? I want Mommy and Daddy to come home, Mateo." Lily's heart shattered at the sound of him. Vincent heard it too, and something in his eyes softened. "Tell him," he whispered. "Mommy and Daddy are coming home." Across the warehouse, Emma stood braced against a wall, trembling, eyes wide as she stared at the scene in front of her in stunned disbelief. When things finally settled, when Serena was cuffed and dragged away, when the medics began treating Vincent, Emma looked at her sister and asked, her voice shaking, "Lily, who is that man?" Lily looked down at Vincent, at the blood, the pain, and the way he still tried to smile at her. "My husband." For the first time, the word didn't feel like a lie. 3 days after the horror at the Pier 17 warehouse, the 1-month wedding anniversary party still went forward exactly as planned. The Moretti mansion was dressed in splendor, crystal chandeliers casting warm light across the vast hall, fresh flowers from all over the world arranged in expensive crystal vases, and more than 100 of the highest-ranking figures in New York's underworld gathered in full force. Vincent stood at the head of the room, his shoulder bandaged beneath a perfectly tailored black suit, his back straight as steel, his face giving away not a trace of pain. He was still the Iron Wolf, still the terrifying boss all of New York feared, and the wound on his shoulder only made him look more dangerous. Lily stood beside him in a dress as red as blood, as red as victory. The gown clung to her body, revealing curves she used to hide beneath a maid's uniform. Her brown hair was swept up in a regal twist, and the diamond on her left ring finger glittered under the chandeliers. She wasn't the timid maid from West Virginia anymore. She was Mrs. Moretti, and tonight she would prove it. Don Carlo Benedetti arrived late, as if he wanted to make an entrance. He walked into the hall with the confidence of a powerful boss. A greasy smile spread across his heavy face, completely unaware that his daughter was being held in the basement of this very mansion. He approached Vincent with arms wide as if greeting an old friend. "Vincent, my boy, congratulations on your marriage. I hope there's no lingering trouble over old business between us." Vincent stared at him, gray eyes cold as ice, and didn't answer. Instead, he stepped onto the small platform in the center of the room and lifted a hand for silence. "Thank you all for coming tonight." His voice carried through the hall, deep and commanding. "But before we celebrate, there are a few things I need to share with you." The large screen behind him lit up and the video began to play. Serena's voice filled the room, clear in the silence, confessing every detail of how she had arranged the crash that killed Isabella. of the secret meetings with Don Carlo to plan Mateo's assassination, of the mad jealousy that had driven every step she took. "This is the recording from the warehouse, from the mouth of my wife's killer herself," Vincent said, his voice ice cold. "Serena Blackwell, daughter of Don Carlo Benedetti, killed Isabella Moretti 3 years ago. And recently she and her father plotted to assassinate my son, Mateo." The hall erupted into murmurs, whispers spreading everywhere. Don Carlo went pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but he still tried to smile. "This is a lie," he shouted, his voice shaking. "You can't believe this. This is a smear campaign." Then he did something no one expected. He drew a concealed gun and aimed it straight at Vincent, eyes red with rage and desperation. "You think you can take everything from me? My daughter, my empire, I'll kill you first." But before he could pull the trigger, 20 guns swung toward him from every direction. Vincent's men were positioned all around the room, and there was nowhere to run. The weapon was ripped from his hand, and Don Carlo was forced down onto his knees, his face pressed into the expensive red carpet. Then a side door opened and Serena was brought in. She looked ruined, no longer the proud beauty in the expensive red dress Lily had once seen. Her black hair was a mess, her face hollow from sleeplessness, and the eyes that used to be ice cold were now full of fear and despair. She saw Vincent, and despite everything, she still screamed, "Vincent, please. I did it all for you. I love you." Vincent looked at her without a flicker of mercy. "You killed my wife. You tried to kill the mother of my son. That isn't love. That's sick obsession." Serena sobbed and dropped to her knees. "You won't kill me. You don't kill women. You know me." Vincent watched her for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right. I don't kill women." Then he turned to Lily and every eye in the room swung to her. "But my wife can." The hall held its breath. Lily stepped forward and stood before Serena, kneeling on the floor, looking down at the woman who had threatened her, who had tried to kill her sister, who had nearly taken her life more than once. Serena looked up, eyes swimming with tears, waiting for judgment. "No," Lily said, her voice clear and carrying. Hope flickered in Serena's eyes. But Lily wasn't finished. "She isn't worth staining my hands with blood. Let her rot in prison. Let her live out the rest of her life in misery, knowing she's lost everything, knowing Vincent never loved her, knowing I won." Serena screamed, the sound ripping through the air, raw with pain and madness. She fought as she was dragged away, hurling curses no one cared to hear. The door closed and silence fell over the room. Vincent turned to Lily and looked at her, truly looked at her the way he had the first time in the mansion hallway months ago. "This is why you're my queen." For the first time, Lily believed it. A week had passed since the night of that fateful party, and for the first time in months, the Moretti mansion was wrapped in peace. Late afternoon sunlight slipped through the velvet curtains, spilling warm gold across the rooms, and Mateo's laughter drifted in from the garden where he was playing with Mrs. Rosa. No more gunfire, no more blood, no more fear stalking the shadows. Serena Blackwell had been transferred to a federal prison, facing a life sentence for murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She would never see the sunlight of freedom again, and it was the punishment she deserved for what she'd done. Don Carlo Benedetti, meanwhile, had been stripped of all power in a closed meeting of the families. His territory was divided among the others, his assets seized, and he himself was sent off to some remote place no one knew and no one cared to know. He would live out the rest of his life in oblivion. And that was more painful than death. That afternoon, Emma came to visit Lily. She'd recovered from the shock of the warehouse, but there was still something haunted in her eyes. Something permanently changed after seeing the real world her sister lived in. Emma sat down beside Lily on the sofa in the luxurious living room, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. "I never said thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You almost died for me." Lily took her sister's hand and squeezed it tight. "You're my sister. I'd do it 1,000 times if I had to." Emma was quiet for a moment, her gaze drifting around the grand mansion, the expensive paintings, the lavish furniture, the completely different life her sister was living. "This life, this world, it scares me, Lily," she admitted. But then she lifted her head, looked into Lily's eyes, and a small smile formed. "But you look happy, happier than I have ever seen you." Lily looked at her sister and realized she was right. I think I really am happy. Emma hugged her, arms tight, and whispered into Lily's ear. Then I'm happy too. Just don't get shot again. Okay. Lily laughed, the first truly relieved laugh she'd had in months, and held her sister close. That night, Vincent called Lily to his office. She stepped into the familiar room scented with oak and whiskey, the place where everything had started not long ago with an offer of a contract marriage. Vincent was sitting behind the desk, but when she entered, he stood, opened a drawer, and took out a stack of papers. Their marriage contract. Lily looked at him, not understanding what he was doing, until Vincent took the contract and tore it in half right in front of her. The pieces fluttered to the floor like snow, and Lily stared at them with her heart pounding. The contract is over, Vincent said, his voice low and steady. The traitor's been dealt with. You're free. Lily looked at the torn pieces on the floor, then lifted her eyes to him. What if I don't want to be free? Vincent stepped closer, gray eyes never leaving hers for even a second. Then what do you want? What if I want to stay? Silence filled the room, heavy and taut, nothing but the sound of their hearts beating in the space between them. Then Vincent reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small, black velvet box. He opened it, and inside was another diamond ring. Not the contract ring she'd worn all this time. This one was smaller, more delicate, yet brighter than anything Lily had ever seen. And Vincent Moretti, the most feared mafia boss in New York, the iron wolf the entire city trembled before, dropped to one knee in front of her. Then let me do this the right way, he said, his voice rough, thick with feelings he'd held back for far too long. No contract, no obligation, no business arrangement. Just me, a broken man with too much blood on his hands, begging the woman who saved my son, who survived my world, who somehow made me feel again after I thought that part of me died with Isabella. He looked up, gray eyes shining under the lamplight, and Lily saw something there she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, sincerity, love. Marry me for real this time, because I love you in a way that's desperate, complete, and terrifying. Lily sank it down to his level, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she smiled through the tears. Yes, this kiss wasn't acting. This time it was real. 1 year later, the Moretti mansion was flooded with warm, golden afternoon sunlight, chasing away every shadow and every painful memory that had once haunted these halls. Lily stood by the living room window, one hand resting gently on her 7-month belly, watching the rose garden in full bloom. She'd changed so much from the thin girl in a maid's uniform back then. Now she wore a soft white dress, her glossy brown hair falling over her shoulders, and on her face was the satisfied smile of a woman who'd finally found where she belonged. The thunder of small feet on the wooden floor made her turn. Matteo burst into the room. 7 years old now, taller than he'd been last year, still mischievous and overflowing with energy the way he always was. Mom, can I feel the baby kick? He asked, big eyes bright with curiosity and excitement. Lily laughed, bent down, and guided her son's small hand to her belly. The baby's sleeping right now, sweetheart. Matteo waited a moment, then looked up. Mom said the baby's a girl, right? My little sister. That's right, your little sister. Matteo's eyes lit up like 2 stars. I'm going to be the best big brother ever. I'll protect her from everything. Lily kissed her son's forehead, her heart overflowing. I know you will. There was a knock at the door and a familiar voice floated in. Knock, knock. Your favorite sister is here for the weekend. Emma stepped in, 18 years old, freshly finished with her first year at Columbia with excellent grades. She'd grown, she'd matured, but her mischievous smile hadn't changed. Only sister, Lily shot back, lips curving, which automatically makes you the favorite. The two of them laughed and hugged each other tight. Emma whispered into Lily's ear, her voice thick. I'm so proud of you, Lily. Mom and Dad would be proud too. Lily held her closer, tears rising but not falling. These were happy tears, not grief. The sound of a car engine rolled up outside and Matteo immediately shouted, his voice bursting with excitement. Dad's home! The boy raced for the door like a little storm. Vincent stepped through the doorway, still in his familiar black suit, still tall and commanding. But his eyes were different now, no longer the ice-cold gray eyes of the Iron Wolf. They were the eyes of a man who'd found his heart again. He bent and lifted Mateo, kissed his son's forehead, then walked into the living room. And when he saw Lily, he stopped. She stood there in white, her belly round, afternoon light catching in her hair like a halo, beautiful enough to steal breath, peaceful enough to feel unreal. Vincent came to her, Mateo still in one arm, the other arm sliding around his wife's waist as he pulled her into a kiss that was gentle and full of love. "I'm home," he whispered against her lips. "Welcome home, Iron Wolf," she whispered back. From 3 bullets to a family, from an invisible maid to the queen of an empire, from a contract signed in desperation to a love written in blood and fire, Anya Petrova had found what she thought she'd lost forever in that ruined estate in the Scottish Highlands. A place to belong, someone to belong to, and a heart brave enough to open and let her in. Some love stories begin with a kiss. Theirs began with sacrifice and ended with forever. Anya and Dimitri's story had closed, but the lessons it left behind would echo on. It was a lesson in courage that sometimes we have to dare to sacrifice. Dare to step out of the safe place we know to protect the people we love. It was a lesson in sincere love, that real love doesn't come from a contract or a bargain. It comes from actions, from care, from the willingness to accept each other with every scar and every past. It was a lesson in resilience that no matter how many times life throws you into the abyss, you can still stand again. You can still find light at the end of the tunnel. And above all, it was a lesson about family. That family isn't only the people who share your blood. It's the people willing to bleed for you, willing to stand beside you in your darkest hours. If you felt every bullet, every kiss, every heartbeat in this story, tap like and share this video with the people you believe will love this impossible love story too. Don't forget to subscribe to Ebon Stories so you won't miss the next moving stories every day. We'd truly love to hear what you felt. What did you think of this story? Which moment moved you most? Was it when Anya took 3 bullets for Sergei? Was it when Dimitri dropped to one knee to propose? Or was it that final moment when the whole family reunited in the golden afternoon light? Share with us in the comments below. We read every comment and we cherish every emotion you send from deep in your heart. Life can sometimes be like Anya's story, full of trials and storms. But as long as we don't give up, as long as we believe in love and kindness, happiness will come. Wishing all of you watching this video strong health, a joyful life, in peace each day. Thank you for staying with us.